Welcome back to part 3 of my series on how to fatten up your snare drum without EQ or compression. If you want to see the previous parts, there'll be a link to the playlist that just pops up there. And if you want to be sure that you can stay up to date on all of the latest developments on not just snares, but on how to just make fat music, and by that I mean obviously P-H-A-T, as in good music, be sure to like and subscribe. So previously we've talked about how to get reverb on your snare perfectly every time to just fill up that space, how to dial in just the right amount of distortion or saturation to add some body to your snare. And on this edition, we're going to talk about using pitch shifting of all things. Yes, pitch shifting. Just a minor tweak to what pitch your snare is in can really do a lot more to fatten up the snare than EQ would by shifting it into a different, universe, sort of, a different harmonic universe. That EQ sort of shifts what's already there around, but this actually would shift the fundamental underlying sample. So this is something you kind of have to be careful with if you've got overheads or room mics that are also picking up the snare. But if you've got a clean snare for a sample, then you're good to go. So let me just open up a Kong here. If you're doing a regular beat with if you're programming something with a Kong, you actually have a pitch button here that you could use to offset it with. And maybe we'll get into that in a second. Maybe we'll get into that in the next video, actually. That's not a second, it's in the next video. But here what we're doing is we're actually taking, this is kind of like an audio recording, and we're pitching down the snare. The problem is that the snare and the overheads and in the room isn't going to be having this going on, but we're just going to let it ride for now. So here we go. We're going to listen to the drums both with all the processing and without all the processing, and just pay attention to the snare. And bypass. Let's listen to how dead it is right now. Flabby. All right, so let's solo it. And now let's try turning the Neptune off. Now this isn't something you're always going to want to use, and I'm overusing it right now, but just to prove a point. But what you want to put the Neptune at the top of your signal chain so that it doesn't have to work with as much information, aka the distortion and the reverb. So we'll experiment with having nothing on, and then we'll slowly bring it down until it sounds fat. That sounds slightly fatter to me. And that sounds terribly in lower. But you also don't want to go too far. It starts to sound weird, but we don't need pitch adjust on. And the formant is kind of another way of doing it, where you can add a little bit more at the top if you can. Let's try bypassing it. Just a little bit lower down, maybe 1 is enough. At some point we're going to want to do EQ. Like I said, there's none on here. But let's just look at how this changes the EQ profile. The point here, you can see the frequency shifting. sort of thing, I think it helps to move the transpose and the form in opposite directions. It's not always going to sound better, but this is definitely something you might want to consider as opposed to using EQ and compression. Like, if we're using EQ, we'll turn it on, and I'll just E mode. You saw how the Neptune was shifting the bands, but let's listen to how it would shift it to do it with an EQ. Sorry, it's going to take a second to trigger. You hear how honky it is? Instead, if we anyway, this isn't a EQ tutorial, but the main thing I want to show you is that it sounds very different than trying to boost a frequency that you want more of. Shifting the fundamental location of the pitch of the sound really affects things in a different way. It's not always going to be your silver bullet, but it can really help. So hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next video in which we deal with layering samples the easy, fast way. Thanks.